Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and I was always told how to voice radio, so today we're going to be looking at a new Tyrantrum card, which is going to be coming in the upcoming Forbidden Light expansion, and I'm kind of liking this. It's got an ability, which is kind of unique, and kind of awesome, to be perfectly honest with you. Now, first things first, it is a fighting Pokemon. Fighting Pokemon is great. It means you got access to Brooklet Hill, which can be used to search out your basic fighting Pokemon, which, given this as a fossil Pokemon, is pretty much entirely irrelevant. The good news is, you still do get Strong Energy to add a bit of damage, or Regirock to add a bit of damage, or Diancie Prism Star to add a little bit of extra damage. You have got 160 HP, which is pretty good. It's fairly standard for a Stage 2, since we saw things like Dragonite coming around in Sun and Moon. 160 has been standard, but still, it's pretty gosh darn good. It is weak to grass, which could be an issue with stuff like Golisopod or Tapu Bulu running around. But you can't have everything. It's not the worst weakness ever, but it's certainly not the best. Retreat cost of 3 is large, but it does mean that until the rotation at least you get Heavy Ball. And do remember that this is a fossil Pokemon, so that means you need to use a fossil. Now, interestingly enough, we do have Unidentified Fossil, which came out in Ultra Prism, but that doesn't have a jaw fossil on it. It's got 4 different types of fossils that can be seen. I personally do not see a jaw fossil here. Does that mean that Tyrantrum is going to be able to evolve from an unidentified fossil in the same way that Bastiodon and Rampardos can? Or does it mean instead that we're actually going to have a different kind of fossil that is going to be released in the near future, which we are going to use instead to evolve up into this particular Pokemon? The answer is, I don't really know. We are going to have to wait and see. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. The good news is, either way, you can use Rare Candy to evolve straight from a fossil into one of these Pokemon. That was a ruling that was decided way back in 2004. But the bad news is, you are not going to be able to use Brooklet Hill to search out the basic, because the basic here is a fossil, not a fighting Pokemon. Now, I do like the ability here a lot on Tyrantrum. Huge shout out to the lovely Antoine Boulay, who tweeted these to me, tagging me in them, which makes me love him very much indeed. He reckons the ability is called Tyrant Heart, which is a great name for an ability. If you have as many Pokemon or fewer than your opponent in play, your attacks do an extra 60 damage, and this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a really good ability. Now, first of all, it kind of reminds me of the Fight Alone Lucario that came around in Fates Collide, which was another one of those cards where, well, it had one particular attack which got supercharged if you had fewer Pokemon in play than your opponent. The good news is, Tyrantrum's ability will work if you've got the same number of Pokemon in play as your opponent. And the bad news is, it can be turned off by Garbodor. The good news is, Garbodor's about to rotate, which means if you want to turn off abilities, you're going to have to use Alolan Muck, which doesn't work against Tyrantrum because it's not a basic, or you're going to have to use Glaceon GX, which doesn't work against Tyrantrum because it is neither a GX nor an EX. So it's an ability that's going to stay around. Now, if we look at what the ability actually does, firstly, it reduces damage done by 30 from every attack. This is flat out better than Hard Charm. Hard Charm was a tool that saw a fair bit of play that reduced damage done to you by 30 every time your opponent attacked. This, ladies and gentlemen, is really good. We're going to have to wait to see a translation for this to make it official, but it certainly seems like this will also work when Tyrantrum's on the bench. So something like a Buzzwole using Jet Punch, if you're on the bench, it will do 0 damage to you. That is absolutely brilliant. It gives you an effective HP of 190, which is right up there with something like Buzzwole, which is a 2-prize GX Pokemon, but you are a non-GX. That's really cool. Now, I say effective HP of 190, because if your opponent doesn't do exactly 190 or more, then you're going to take more than one attack, and the total number of damage done to you is going to be more than 190. It's just going to keep going up and up and up. If your opponent wants to 2-hit KO you here, they've actually got to do a total of 220 because they need to add 60 damage. If they want to 3-hit KO you, they've got to do 250, and so on and so forth. But it's not just that you take less damage, you also do an extra 60. So if your opponent has more Pokemon or the same amount as you in play, you are doing an extra 60 damage for all of your attacks. This means that it's essentially like a double choice band, even if you're hitting a non-EX, non-GX. Now, the bad news is, at the moment, we don't actually know what Tyrunt does. If Tyrunt has got a nice ability for low energy, then you're going to be able to use the Shining Celebi, and that means that you can then copy his attack, and then you might be rolling. You might have a single energy attack that does 40 damage, but goes up to 100 because Tyrantrum gets the ability. We don't have an image of Tyrunt right now, unfortunately, which is a shame. So, yeah, that sucks, and we're going to have to deal with it later. But I want you to bear it in mind. If Tyrunt's got a good low-energy attack, this could become really, really good. Now, in terms of Tyrantrum's attack, fighting, colorless, 100 damage, and discard an energy attached to the defending Pokemon. This is any energy, not just a special energy, which is very nice, but it's 100 damage for free energy. You can't use double colorless, which kind of sucks. And to be frank, ladies and gentlemen, 100 for free energy is not particularly good. But that is, of course, assuming that the ability isn't active. If the ability is active, you're doing 160 for free energy, and that is very nice indeed. And it adds up super, super quickly. You add a Regirock, you can do 170, there's a KO on Tapu Lele. You add a Choice Band, you're doing 190, there's a KO on Buzzwole. And if you add a Diancie Prism Star, which does an extra 20 damage, well, allows your fighting Pokemon to do an extra 20 damage, then you can actually be doing 210, and then you're getting a one-hit KO on a Golisopod as well, which of course is interesting because Golisopod is going to be one of the biggest threats given that it hits you for weakness. This damage adds up very, very quickly indeed, and for free energy, this is really quite good. This is a good free energy attack. The problem is, as much as I love the ability, and I do, it's basically like 1.5 hard charms and 2 choice bands in one ability. And as much as I love the attack when the ability is active, 160 for free energy is nothing to sniff at. I mean, heck, that's basically the same as Buzzwole, except you also get to discard an energy attached to the defending Pokemon. All of this is good, but it's on a Pokemon that is a stage 2, but it evolves from a fossil. And then, of course, you've got to have free energy attachments. You can't use double colorless. Then, of course, it's only really good when the ability's kicking in. So you need to make sure you've got fewer Pokemon in play than your opponent, which means that cards like Tapu Lele that you might want to play, you end up not playing because then you lose the ability. Or you might not be benching a Pokemon that you want to bench to set up a new attacker in the future, because you don't want to lose the ability, and that's where I come down on Tyrantrum. I like Tyrantrum. I like the ability, I like the attack, and it's basically a T-Rex. But it's just awkward to get into play. It makes it a difficult card to score, so I'm just going to go straight down the middle and give it a nice, ordinary, everyday, run-of-the-mill, garden variety, safe and sound, free Wassies. If this was a basic Pokemon, I would absolutely adore it. And if we get a Tyrunt, which has a really nice low ability attack, so you can combine the low energy attack from Tyrunt with the ability from Tyrantrum, then I might be loving it, because you can use Shining Celebi to do that. As it stands at the moment, I think it's a card with potential, but I think it's just a little bit too awkward to use, so 3 Wassies is where we come down. But as with all of these, ladies and gentlemen, I would love to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and so on, you can do so by going over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.